It's pretty amazing what can end up sparking a major legal battle. A simple question like, how many sheep can a field hold? Sounds straightforward, right? Well, today we're going to dive into a case that's almost 100 years old that hinged on that exact question. And believe me, it perfectly shows us the razor-thin line between a simple opinion and a legally binding fact.
So can your personal opinion actually get you sued? It's a huge question, especially when you're negotiating anything really. The answer is, well, it's complicated. And honestly, the best way to get our heads around it is to look at a real story from way back when.
All right, let's set the scene. Picture this. It's 1926, we're in rural New Zealand. Two fellas are shaking hands on a deal for a big piece of land. Seems totally normal, right? But what they don't know is that this simple transaction is about to go down in legal history.
Okay, so let's meet the two guys at the center of all this. On one side, you've got Mr. Bissett. He's the buyer, and he's got big plans to start a sheep farm. And on the other side, there's Mr. Wilkinson, the seller. Now here is the absolute key detail you have to remember. Wilkinson owns the land, sure, but he has never, ever actually farmed sheep on it.
So as they're hashing out the details, Bissett, the buyer, asks a pretty reasonable question. Hey, how many sheep do you think this land can handle? And Wilkinson replies with these exact words. My idea was that it would carry 2,000 sheep. The deal gets done, everyone's happy, but not for long.
Yeah, there is a major problem. Turns out the land couldn't support anywhere close to 2,000 sheep, not even in the ballpark. So Bissett felt like he'd been completely misled. He refused to make the final payment, and, well, you can guess what happened next. The whole dispute ended up in court.
And this brings us right to the heart of it, the big legal question. Was what Mr. Wilkinson said a misrepresentation? Was it a lie, basically? And was it a serious enough lie to just tear up the whole contract? To figure that out, we've got to look at what the law actually calls a misrepresentation.
So what is a misrepresentation in legal terms? It's a false statement of fact, a fact that convinces someone to sign on the dotted line. Now, the most important word in that whole definition is fact. See, not every little thing you say during a negotiation counts, and that's what this entire case is built on.
And this is the core distinction right here. A statement of fact is something you can prove. It's objective, it's verifiable. Like saying the land is 500 acres. You can go out and measure that. But a statement of opinion? That's just a personal belief. Like saying, I think this land is beautiful. Good luck trying to prove that in a courtroom. So the million-dollar question is, which one was the 2,000 sheep statement?
So this case, Bissett versus Wilkinson, it went all the way to the top, to the Privy Council in London, which was the highest court for New Zealand back then. The judges looked at everything, they heard all the arguments, and they came to a very clear decision. They actually sided with Mr. Wilkinson, the seller. So why? How did the seller win? Well, the court's thinking was actually pretty simple. First, both guys knew the land had never been used for sheep farming. It was totally untested. And crucially, Mr. Wilkinson was no sheep farming expert, and the buyer, Mr. Bissett, knew that perfectly well. So the court said his statement wasn't a hard fact. It was just an honest guess, a belief about the land's potential. In other words, it was an opinion.
I know what you might be thinking. Okay, that's a cool story about a sheep farm in 1926. What does that have to do with me today? Well, it has everything to do with you. This principle is incredibly relevant, and you probably run into it all the time without even realizing it. Seriously, this idea is everywhere. Think about ads that claim to have the best coffee in the world. The law just calls that puffery. It's an opinion, not a fact. Or think about buying a used car. When the seller says, oh, it's a great car, that's their opinion. But if they say it has new tires, well, that's a statement of fact. You can check that. And that little case about the 2,000 sheep is what helps us draw that critical line. So this case sets a really clear standard. But it also leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to chew on. What if Mr. Wilkinson had been an expert sheep farmer? How much does someone's expertise change the game? At what point does an expert's opinion become so powerful that the law starts to treat it like a cold, hard fact? Now that's a question that courts are still wrestling with today.